With Code Orange and Converge releasing massively popular albums last year, how did Harm's Way do at competing with their peers? They recently signed with Metal Blade Records and now are putting out their first album on that, which is actually their fourth album, Posthuman. Now, something that can be a problem for me whenever I'm listening to music or especially reviewing. Whenever I'm preparing to do a review, I always do several listens through of an album because I have a hard time remembering specific tracks most of the time. So, I don't usually fault bands whenever I get through a listen and it's like, well, I don't remember a lot of tracks from it, you know? It's usually not the fault of the band. This is why I do several listens and then I go back and I'm like, okay, you know what? I start to remember more and more. This album was no different. This one I did quite a few listens as well. And even that being said, some of these tracks still just never really caught my attention. That's kind of how this album starts. Most of the beginning tracks are just not that memorable. No matter how many times through I listened, I didn't find myself ever wanting to return to them. And that goes for most of the first half of the album. Not that hardcore has to be like catchy. You know, lots of bands do it without being catchy at all. But, you know, you've got to have something in the songs that grabs your attention and sticks to your memory so that you want to go back and listen to them again. That you have reason to think about them, you know? That it actually sticks in your brain. Something about it has to stick in your brain. Even if it's not, you know, the word catchy. When I say catchy, I always think of something that repeats several times to help you remember it. Lots and lots of bands don't do anything catchy, and hardcore oftentimes does not use this technique to make people remember its songs. A lot of the times they do things like, you know, creating just a really good brutal sounding part that would be fun, you know, that you think it comes on and you're like, man, that's when you know it's about to go down in the pit, you know, if this was being played live, something like that. Hardcore also sometimes makes its money doing things with the lyrics where you kind of, you know, it's a message, and a lot of times people agree with the message. Hardcore, most of the time, I would say, is either politically driven or socially driven in some way, and a lot of times people will enjoy the music just because they agree with the message that's behind it. So hardcore has its ways of appealing to people without being catchy, but sometimes they do it too. I'm not trying to say that these songs are inherently just bad. If you are a really big fan of hardcore, if you're a big fan of Harm's Way or this style, you will probably enjoy them more than me. I'm not exactly a hardcore connoisseur, I would say, to where, you know, like, I just enjoy it because, a little bit, just because it's hardcore, you know? It's not really the way I listen to it. It's not really the way I listen to most genres, I would say, but it's especially not with hardcore, you know? I get a little bit picky with it, I would say. If I can make a quick comparison to help you understand exactly what I'm saying, Harm's Way's Posthuman is kind of like, if we're drawing comparisons maybe to death metal, Harm's Way's Posthuman would be like Deicide's Servants of the Light. If you are really into death metal, you're probably going to enjoy that album. Whereas something like Converge's album from last year, The Dusk in Us, that's more like Death's Leprosy, to where, you know, even if you're not huge into death metal, if you even kind of like it, it's an album that you probably enjoy at least some tracks off of it, if not the whole thing. You know, Death's Leprosy is just kind of beloved by everybody who at least kind of likes death metal, no matter what spectrum and you come from. If you know, no matter what kind of death metal is your favorite, you probably like Leprosy by Death. Same thing here. You know, Converge with that album last year, everybody who likes hardcore seemed to like that. Even people who weren't crazy about it recognized how good it was, and they found some enjoyment out of it. The Harm's Way did not really craft that here, I don't think. I think for hardcore fans, this will be quite enjoyable. Now, I didn't start making this video just to shit on this album all the way through. I enjoyed quite a bit of it. Even on those songs that I said that, you know, didn't quite catch me, I still enjoyed them, you know. I'm not gonna go back to them more than likely, but I don't mind them, and I don't think they're inherently bad. I just don't think they did anything to really grab you. Harm's Way does a better job of making some of those songs on the back half of this album. My 3 favorite tracks actually all appear on the back half of this. Dissect Me, Call My Name, and Dead Space. Those were all really enjoyable tracks to me. They all appealed in some way or another. Dissect Me actually is kind of catchy with the guitar that they use there. It's kind of a repeating riff that sounds really good. So that helped for me to really grab a hold of that one. I'd say if you're looking for a starting point on the album, just one song to pick out to try to start getting into it, Dissect Me would be my personal pick for that. Dead Space is the album closer, and it was, has a really good chorus, has a really good use of like backup vocals along with the lead vocals, and the way that these two, they don't harmonize per se, they actually kind of go back and forth, you know. The lead singer says one thing, the backup vocals come in and say another, and it's really interesting the way they do that, and I really enjoyed that track as well. And then of course they have that one track on the album that's just different from everything else. It's called The Gift. It's mostly just industrial type noise. I mean, I guess you can call it a song. It is a song. Like, it does use instruments and singing and stuff like that. It's just not like a traditional song like that these guys do, or just not a traditional song in general. But it fits with the album. It made for a nice change of pace. I always talk about I like to have a nice change of pace on an album. The Gift was really good for that. And it also falls on the second half of this album. Like I said, I felt they really picked it up in the second half, and they really saved this thing from being just kind of really, really mediocre to, once you get to the second half, okay, there's quite a bit to enjoy there. Is it gonna blow away even like the most hardcore fan, I should say? Probably not. Is it gonna blow away like Harm's Way fans? I don't think so, but I think some congratulations are still in order to Harm's Way for making this album. It is enjoyable, even for someone like me who doesn't just take everything hardcore and enjoy it, you know? I get a little picky, you know, with it. Even I found quite a bit to enjoy on this, especially on the second half of this album. All this being said, I'm gonna score this a 6 out of 10. If I got, you know, through the first half of the album, and I was probably gonna get a lower score, but after that second half, man, I just enjoyed that so much that it really brought this thing back and brought some good tracks into the fold. So that's just my 2 cents on the new Harm's Way album. That's it for this one, guys. If you've made it this far into the video and have somehow not smashed and destroyed the like button, there's no hope for you. I hate to say. I'm just kidding. See you guys later.